There is a country in Africa that has never been colonized, a country that held off European empires with spears and shields. And today, it is doing something just as remarkable. It is building one of the fastest growing economies on the continent, and almost nobody outside Africa is paying attention. This is the story of Ethiopia, not the Ethiopia of headlines and aid campaigns. The Ethiopia of factories, construction cranes, billionaires, and billion-dollar deals. The Ethiopia where a government built railways from scratch, where a single businessman turned a small trading company into a conglomerate, and where the rules of African business are being quietly rewritten. How did this happen, and who is really running the engine? Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa, with over 120 million people. That is a market, a big one. And for most of its modern history, that market was almost entirely closed. State-owned enterprises, meaning companies owned and run by the government, controlled everything from telecoms to banking to airlines. Private business was tightly restricted. Foreign investment was barely welcome. Then things began to shift. In 2018, a new prime minister took office. His name was Abiy Ahmed. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for ending a two-decade conflict with neighboring Eritrea. But inside Ethiopia, he also launched something economic reformers had been waiting for. He began opening the economy. State monopolies, meaning industries where only one company or the government is allowed to operate, started cracking open. Ethio Telecom, the country's only phone network and one of the largest telecoms companies in Africa, was partially open to private competition. Safaricom, the Kenyan telecom giant behind M-Pesa, entered the market in 2022 with a consortium worth $2 billion. That was a signal. Ethiopia was open for business. But the business story here goes deeper than one political moment. Long before Abiy Ahmed arrived, one man had already been building something enormous inside Ethiopia's borders. His name is Mohammed Hussein Al-Amoudi. He is worth an estimated $8 billion and is one of the wealthiest people in Africa. He was born in Ethiopia to a Yemeni family, built his fortune in Saudi Arabia through oil, real estate, and construction, and then turned significant resources back toward his country of birth. Through his investment company, MIDROC Ethiopia, Al-Amoudi built a business empire that touches almost every part of the Ethiopian economy. Gold mining, farms, hotels, cement factories. The Lega Dembi gold mine, once one of the largest producing mines in East Africa, was operated under his group for years. His agricultural investments stretched across hundreds of thousands of hectares of land. His hotels in Addis Ababa became landmarks. This is what a business empire actually looks like. Not just one company, a network, a web of holdings, licenses, and contracts that together give one group of investors extraordinary influence over how a country runs. And Al-Amoudi was not alone in seeing the opportunity Ethiopia represented. The country's state-owned enterprises themselves became economic engines. Ethiopian Airlines is perhaps the most dramatic example. Run by CEO Tewolde Gebremariam for over a decade, the airline became the most profitable and fastest growing carrier on the continent. While South African Airways collapsed, while Kenya Airways struggled with debt, Ethiopian Airlines expanded its fleet, opened new routes across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas, and turned Addis Ababa into a genuine aviation hub. The airline now connects more African cities to the rest of the world than any other carrier on the continent. Think about what that means for business. An airline is not just a way to travel, it is infrastructure. When Ethiopian Airlines adds a new route to a city, investors can move capital there. Manufacturers can move goods. Executives can hold meetings. An airline is a door, and Ethiopia kept building more doors. The government also made a bet on manufacturing. Ethiopia built industrial parks, meaning dedicated zones where factories can operate with tax breaks, cheap land, and ready infrastructure. The Hawassa Industrial Park, opened in 2016, became a flagship project. Within 2 years, international garment brands including PVH, the company behind Calvin Klein, and Tommy Hilfiger had set up factories there. Ethiopia offered something rare in global manufacturing: very low wages, a large young population, and landlocked stability that China, with rising costs, could no longer match for certain products. This was deliberate economic strategy. The government was not waiting for business to arrive. It was building the conditions to attract it. But every fast-growing economy has pressure points, and Ethiopia's are real. The country has faced devastating conflict. The war in the Tigray region, which erupted in 2020 and lasted years, killed hundreds of thousands of people, displaced millions, and caused international investors to pause. Factory operations slowed. Infrastructure projects stalled. The International Monetary Fund, which lends money to governments in financial difficulty, flagged Ethiopia's rising debt. The country had borrowed heavily to build the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a massive hydroelectric project on the Blue Nile that will eventually be one of the largest power stations on the continent. That dam remains a source of tension with Egypt and Sudan, both of which depend on the Nile's water flow, debt, conflict, and geopolitical tension. These are not small problems. They are the kind of pressures that can stall a growth story before it fully arrives. And yet, the private sector keeps building. New banks have entered the market. The Ethiopian Securities Exchange launched in 2023, meaning businesses can now sell shares to the public and raise money from investors on a formal stock market, something that was not possible before. Startups in fintech, agriculture technology, and logistics are attracting venture capital, meaning early-stage investment from funds looking for the next big winner. What Ethiopia is doing, in pieces and with setbacks, is the same journey every major economy has made. Build infrastructure, open markets, attract capital, train workers, and let business do the rest. The question for Africa is not whether Ethiopia will grow. The trajectory is clear. The question is, what kind of business empire emerges from that growth? Who owns it? Who benefits? And whether the lessons of Dangote's Nigeria, ShopRite's South Africa, and Safaricom's Kenya will guide Ethiopian entrepreneurs toward building companies that last. The country that never fell to colonizers is now facing a different kind of conquest. The conquest of capital, competition, and market forces. And if history is any guide, Ethiopia will not go quietly. If you like this story and want to know more about the companies, entrepreneurs, industries, scandals, and business empires shaping the African continent, hit like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.